Welcome, boys and girls of all ages. Today we're going to have another Bible study. This will be our third Bible study, and we're talking about and learning about prophets in the Bible. And so far we have learned about two prophets. We've learned about Joseph, who was a son of Jacob, and how he was a prophet and saved his brothers and their families from famine in Egypt. Then we learned about Moses and how he saved the people from Israel and freed them from slavery in Egypt after Joseph had died and a mean Pharaoh had come to the throne. Well, after Moses had freed the Israelites from Egypt and they left Egypt, and they wandered in the desert for about 40 years or so. And God gave them the 10 Commandments and told them where they needed to go. And finally, God said, I want you to go to a land that I promised to Abraham and to his son Isaac and to Jacob as a land for them to live in forever and ever. And it's called the Promised Land because God had promised. You probably can't see this very well, but this is a map of the land of Israel, and all of the different colors are the different places in which the Israelites, the different 12 sons of Israel, settled and built their houses and their towns. But in this land, there were also people called Canaanites. And they didn't like the Israelites very much. And sometimes they made war against the Israelites, and they treated the Israelites very badly. Well, today's story is about one of those times when the Canaanites were mistreating and bullying the Israelites. And none of us like bullies very well. So today, instead of having our light tan color background, we have a green colored background. I wonder why we have green today instead of the tan color. Do you remember what the tan color stood for in our stories? It stood for the desert, and the desert is very sandy and tan colored. But this is green. What do we associate with green? We associate green grass and places where it's very lush. And God had said that this promised land, the promised land to Israel, would be flowing with milk and honey and fruit and vegetables of all kinds. And so that's why we have the green, because this is a very fertile and good land to grow crops in. Well, when the Canaanites were being mean and bullying the Israelites, there was a woman whose name was Deborah. And she was a prophet or prophetess because she was a woman. A boy prophet or man prophet is a prophet, and a woman prophet is a prophetess. So Deborah liked to sit underneath a palm tree called the Palm of Deborah because it was Deborah's favorite tree. And the people of Israel would come to her, and she was a judge over Israel. So they would, if they had any complaints or any problems, she would come and help them solve their problems. Well, one time when she was sitting under her palm tree, God gave her a message on how to save the Israelites once again and to stop the Canaanites from being bullies. God said to Deborah, I want you to call the general of the Israelite army, whose name was Barak, and you're going to give him a message. So Barak comes before Deborah, and Deborah says, God has sent me a message. God has said that you are going to lead his army against the Canaanites, and you are going to defeat that army. The general of the Canaanite army, his name was Sisera. And he was a very bad and evil man, and he helped to oppress the Israelites. So we have a couple more things to put down. We have a brown kind of circlish and another brown circlish here. And then we have this blue strip right here. The army of the Canaanites was made up of 900 chariots of iron. Iron is a very heavy metal, and it's hard to get 900 chariots on this screen, so I've just got a few chariots. So just think that there's 900 of these very heavy chariots. And the Israelites were afraid of these big heavy chariots of iron because they didn't have chariots. They just had to run and walk on foot when they were in battle. And the chariots would roll over them and hurt them. So they didn't like the chariots very well. So Deborah tells Barak that he needs to take his army and set them up on Mount Tabor. And Sisera had set his army up on a different mountain, and in between was a river, the river Kishon. In the Bible, in the Hebrew, it calls river is called Wadi, W-A-D-I-E. So this is the Wadi Kadesh, or the Wadi, or the river Kadesh. So Barak takes his army and sets them up on Mount Tabor, just as Deborah had said. And Deborah said that she would go with Barak, and if God had any new messages, that he would help them out. So Barak did just as God had said and set up his army on Mount Tabor, and Sisera's army of Canaanite chariots were on the other mountain on the other side. So Sisera finally called for the chariots to move forward or run forward. So they started running down the mountain towards the river, thinking that they were easily going to cross the river and attack the Israelites on the other side. But then a very miraculous thing happened. God showed up in a very big way. And all of a sudden, it started to rain. Rain as heavy as you've ever seen it rain before. And then there came what is called a flash flood, where it rains so hard that rivers swell and move very fast. So this little tiny river turned into a great big flooded river. And a strange thing happened, that all of a sudden the chariots got stuck in the mud and they couldn't move. So they couldn't move forward and attack the Israelites. So then the drivers had to get down off of their chariots. And so then the Israelites attacked them and destroyed all of the chariots and killed all of the Canaanites. Now when Sisera saw that his army had been destroyed, he got scared and he ran away. And finally, he came to a tent. And this tent belonged to a woman whose name was Jael. And Jael saw Sisera coming, and she says, Sisera, why don't you hide inside of my tent, and then that way nobody can find you when they come to look for you. So that's what he did. He hid inside of Jael's tent. And so Sisera was tired from the battle. It was getting close to the end of the day. And so Jael went inside while Sisera was sleeping, and she killed him. So then all of the Canaanites had now been destroyed. And Israel was all happy. And so they sang a song of Deborah, which is in the Bible in in Judges chapter 5. And they sang a song about Deborah's victory and about how God had helped them out with the great flood that caused the Canaanite chariots to get stuck in the mud. So God had promised the prophetess Deborah a victory, and God fulfilled his promise and his message. So that's the story of Deborah, the prophetess Deborah. So now let's have some wonder questions. And I invite you after each question to pause this video and think about how you would answer the question. And remember, there's no right or wrong answer. You can have a serious answer, you can have a silly answer, or you can have any kind of answer. There's no right or wrong answer. This is not a test. So I wonder what was special about the tree that Deborah would always sit under, the palm tree. I wonder why this was called the Palm of Deborah. I wonder what was special about that tree. I wonder if the Israelite general Barak had any doubt about whether Deborah's prophecy would come true, because he knew that Sisera and his army was very great. I wonder if he trusted in God. I wonder if the Israelites were afraid when they saw all of the big heavy chariots on the other side of the river. The big heavy chariots. I wonder if they were afraid about the chariots. I wonder how the Israelites felt when they saw the enemy running away from the battlefield with their chariots left behind in the mud. I wonder how Jael knew that the man that she saw coming was Sisera. I wonder how she knew that it was Sisera and that he was the general of the Canaanite army. And then finally, when the Israelites sang the song of Deborah and of God's victory, I wonder what kind of musical instruments they might have used in their singing and in making their song. I wonder. So that's the story of Deborah. So now, as we put this away, fold this up nicely, let's talk about, let me show you some crafts that you might be able to do at home that goes with this story. Of course, the first thing that you could do is take a piece of paper with some pencil and maybe some crayons or some colored pencils and draw a picture of the best part of this story that you liked. That would be one craft that you could do. Another would be to have your parents or your grandparents go online, and there are all kinds of pictures, coloring pictures, about the story of Deborah and Barak. So maybe you could print off one of these coloring pages and color the picture of Deborah and Barak. Another craft that you can consider doing is make like a palm tree with Deborah sitting underneath it. I don't know if you could see that very well. But what I did was I took a roll of paper towel, the cardboard roll, and I cut some little green paper. If you don't have green paper, maybe you can just color some white paper green and then cut it out. And then you can take either a brown marker or a brown crayon and kind of do some scribbling on the tube so that it looks like that it's like the bark of a tree. And then I took the little pieces of green and I stapled them on, but maybe you might want to tape them on or try to glue them on. And then I found online a picture of a woman that kind of looks like Deborah, and I colored her and cut her out and set her down at the bottom of the tree, of Deborah's palm tree. And if you can't find a picture, just draw a picture of a woman sitting, and then you can stick her at the bottom of the tree. So that's another craft that you might want to consider that you could probably easily do at home. So make the palm tree of Deborah and put Deborah under the palm tree. Now, another activity that you might want to consider to go with this story. Now, remember the part of the story where it says that the Canaanites, their chariots were very heavy. They were chariots of iron. And remember how they got stuck in the mud because they were so heavy? Well, here's a trick or an activity that I like to call Will It Float? And so take a fairly large size bowl, and if you have a clear bowl, maybe that would be fine, but any kind of bowl or something that you can put water in. And then take some water and slowly pour it into the bowl so that you have a good amount of water in it. And then you might want to get permission or help from your parents or from your grandparents, but go around in your house. I found some items in the church, and I found a little wooden cross, and I found a toothbrush. I found a little wooden bead. I found a crayon, and I found two types of clothespins. One of them is made of wood, and one of them is made of plastic. And of course, to make them springy, they have little wire springs on them. And I have a pencil, a short pencil. I have the cap off of a soda pop or a tea. And this can either be metal or plastic, or maybe find one of each. And then I found a Lego, a big Lego. And you can maybe use a small Lego. And then a paper clip, a little metal paper clip. And what you do is you take each item and you drop it into the water and see if it floats. If it's like the chariots, it's going to sink. If not, it will float. So I drop in the paper clip, and it's heavy. So it sunk like the chariots. So let's see. Let's try the Lego. We'll put the Lego on there. And actually, the Lego floats because it's like a little boat. Let me flip it over and do it the other way. Nope, it kind of wants to float too. Let's try the toothbrush. See if the toothbrush will float. Yep, the toothbrush floats too. Let's try the crayon. Well, nope, the crayon sunk, just like the chariots. We'll see what the pencil does. Oh, the pencil floats. Let's try this little cap. I bet it'll be kind of like the Lego. Yep, it's going to float. So let's flip it over the other way and see if it floats. Yep, it floats. Oh, but then it sunk to the bottom. It's kind of like a ship that's turned upside down. So when it's this way, but if you poke it, it sinks to the bottom. Now I'm real curious. We have our two clothesline pins. So let's try the wooden one first. I'm curious to see if the metal wire will be heavy enough to make it sink. Nope, it's going to float. So now let's try the plastic one. Oh, it sunk to the bottom. It was too heavy. So you can find things around your house. Make sure you get permission. Don't try this with things that might get harmed. So try this little activity and see if things float on top or if they sink like the heavy iron chariots of the Canaanites. Thank you for being with me today, boys and girls of all ages. I hope you enjoyed this and look forward to seeing you again for another study of a prophet.